I am super excited to be a part of this. I've actually had the privilege of being kind of a part of Portland's journey from the seat of a principal last year, using the platform and being a part of some of the collaboration and developing the learning walks and look fors to now client success coach, supporting PPS in their journey forward. So I'm very excited to introduce two individuals from PBS, Kristina Howard and Kristen Moon. Um, Kristina is a transformational system level leader focused on bringing coherence across the district to support the improvement of student outcomes. She currently serves as the senior chief of academics for Portland Public Schools, the largest school district in Oregon, overseeing academics, schools, and student services for approximately 44,000 students. Holding a bachelor's of arts in mathematics from Oakland University and a master of education admin from Lamar University, Christina brings a wealth of experience to her position. Her diverse background includes roles as chief academic officer, senior director of teaching and learning, middle school principal, high school associate principal, instructional coach, and math department chair. Throughout her career, she has been dedicated to advancing the educational equity, demonstrating exceptional leadership, and improving staff retention and student outcomes across all of her roles. Kristen Moon is serves as the director of teacher professional learning for Portland Public Schools, where she oversees the growth and development of over 3,500 educators across 80 schools. Should say 80 plus schools. I think it's like 84. With 23 years of experience in the field, Kristen specializes in designing high impact instructional coaching, mentoring, and professional learning programs. Her leadership is defined by a data-driven approach to system improvement, collaborating with districts and building leaders to establish robust measurement methods that track instructional impact. Kristen's foundational expertise stems from 15 years as a middle grades educator in science, math, STEAM, and English, followed by 5 years as a STEAM instructional coach at both the school and the district level. So I am very excited to introduce Kristen and Christina, and take it away.
Great. Thank you, Mike. And thank you for having us here today. As Mike shared, my name is Kristina. And if you can just go to the next slide, I can share just a little bit more about Portland. Sorry, one more. So I know that Mike shared that we are the largest district in Oregon with around 44,000 students. We have approximately 81 schools, and our superintendent is Dr. Kimberly Armstrong, and she's in her second year of leadership. I also want to note that we are a Wallace district, so we are one of 6 urban districts across the U.S. that are part of a 6-year grant focused on developing the principal pipeline. And that's important in my story that I'm going to share shortly around our journey and what's led us to this point. And it's also important to know that I will be sharing more of the larger direction around coherence that we've been working with Classroom Mosaic on building. And then Kristen's going to share more of what that looks like on the day to day. So you'll hear more of the big picture from me, and then I'll pass to Kristen. So where we have been and where we are going. We have been on a multi-year transformational journey over the last 5-ish years. And it started when our previous superintendent, Superintendent Guerrero, created a new vision in 2019 and a graduate portrait. Shortly after, he worked with many stakeholders to create our strategic plan that technically ends 2025. And so within the strategic plan, there was an action around developing the first version of the instructional framework. Prior to the strategic plan, we just really had teacher evaluation that was grounded in the 2007 version of the Danielson rubric, which was really old. And that was with our union partners. And so that was what we knew instruction to be in Portland. So we really wanted to develop an instructional framework with stakeholders And we landed on four areas: grade level standards aligned instruction, culturally affirming instruction, deeply engaging instruction, and data driven instruction. And so each of those domains consisted of a set of educator and student indicators, and the framework was very large. It had multiple pages with many indicators, and we had went through a very robust engagement process. And so we also had, during that time, adopted, we were in state corrective action because of the materials that we had were very outdated. And so we embarked on a journey to adopt many high quality instructional materials. And so that was part of our key strategy and moving forward was the instructional framework, our high quality instructional materials. And then we knew in order to be able to make those happen in real time, we had to provide robust professional learning. And so that's where Kristen and the team that she leads, as well as our leadership development team, came into play was how are we going to provide robust learning experiences for educators to be able to implement these things in practice. And so in the summer of 2022, that's really where we started launching. And what we realized was that it was it's been a journey. Since then, we've been really on this change journey, and we haven't been seeing the outcomes that we really had hoped by launching our instructional framework, our high quality instructional materials, and our professional learning. We really want to impact our student outcomes, and that is how we are measuring our results. And so we also realized that during this journey that really it was central office directing schools to do these things. It wasn't led through the principal really being that lever for change. And so if you go to the next slide, this is where the Wallace work and our work with Mosaic started to really take action, was realizing that the school is the unit of change and principals are the lever of change, which seems like a simple concept, but when you're designing systems and structures that feel top down, then we're not embodying that theory of change. And so we also knew that at the central office level, principal supervisors are those facilitators of systems level change. And we needed to work with the principal supervisors and the principals to implement any change across the district. And so the next slide is another example of what we're trying to do. Originally, it was sort of the red box on the left where the central office folks are creating the new change idea and then handing it to principals to implement. And so, what our approach has been this past year is really trying to work between this principal supervisor, the central office leaders, and principals in partnership to implement the change. The next thing that we did, and also just to share one more piece about that, we also knew in our Classroom Mosaic journey that we didn't have visibility into evaluation and teacher and principal practice on how we were going to, what does that look like across the district? And if we're relating that to our instructional framework, we had no visibility into understanding how those two things work together. And so the other thing that we did this past year is we had a question that was proposed to us by one of our partners. The question was, what does every student experience in every single classroom in our district? And that question was asked at our cabinet level meeting. And it took us a really long time. We grappled with a lot of things. And what we landed on was that we could not confidently say that there was one thing that every single student was experiencing in every single classroom in terms of instruction. And we knew that ultimately in our path to equity, educational equity, and advancing our student outcomes, we wanted every single student to experience a key set of things in our district in every single classroom. And so this is where we used our instructional framework and we narrowed that big focus from lots of indicators, lots of domains down to three ideal student learning actions. Students know and understand the learning target, success criteria, and why the learning matters. Students successfully engage in grade level and standards aligned tasks with persistence and ask questions to clarify their understanding. And students self-assess their learning and explaining to justify their thinking connected to the learning target and success criteria. And we said, if all students experience that in every single classroom in Portland Public Schools, we are on our path to where we want to be. And then how do we know that all students are experiencing that? And so we would need some sort of system to be able to understand that. We also, during this time, we also took a look at all of our school continuous improvement plans, as well as our district continuous improvement plan, and realized there was a gap in that area. And so if we go to the next slide, yeah, we mapped with some supports, we mapped our ideal student learning actions, those three focus areas that I just shared. And we backwards mapped those, starting with the student in the classroom. What would the educator, what are a couple of key moves the educator needs to focus on? And then what does the school leader need to focus on? What does the principal supervisor need to focus on? And then what does central office need to focus on? And we use those actions to really set the direction in partnership with schools. They were part of this all along the way, including our principal leaders, in setting the direction for our 25-26 school year around our school and continuous improvement plans and our district continuous improvement plans. And this is the ODE framework we use for continuous improvement. And we set the direction for those ideal student learning actions and key strategies and actions that all schools would adopt as well as the district would adopt. If you can go to the next slide. Sorry, you can move forward. I to one more slide. I do want to share, it's Kristen and I were debating where to put this in the presentation. And so in this change journey, as we were embarking on the theory of change around the principal being the lever for change, we did see some initial early signs of success. We had also partnered with Mosaic during our evaluation of our teachers during this time. And so we increased overall for the first time in a really long time, 3 percentage points in ELA and 3 percentage points in math, with all student groups by demographic showing gains. And so that was an early indicator that we're on the right path. The big move that we made for this school year is really aligning around 4 goals. And so if you move forward one more. These are our goals with our district continuous improvement plan. And so the last it's not showing as bold, but within our literacy and math, I had originally bolded the 1 and 2 at the bottom. Those are directly connected to our ideal student learning actions that are part of our instructional framework. Students will know and understand the learning target and success criteria and successfully engage in grade level and standards aligned tasks from district approved high quality instructional materials. And that is in literacy and in math. And that is the district goal. Those are also the school level goals. And then there are aligned strategies and actions. And we're actually using Classroom Mosaic, who's been a wonderful partner, to be able to operationalize and monitor those strategies, actions, and goals in Mosaic. And so we also have, Kristen's going to speak a little bit more, but we also have our instructional walk system as part of our strategy and some actions under that, as well as our evaluation system and monitoring feedback and where we are, how our evaluation is working with teachers in that same system. So we're able to see more of a global level view at the district, as well as individual level view with our schools. And going back to the theory of change, really that principal being that lever for change and monitoring their data at a school site, and then the principal supervisor working and looking across their multiple schools. And then from my vantage point and Kristen's vantage point, a district leader looking at the whole district. And so I just want to point out that I appreciate the opportunity to share, and I also want to share that we are on a journey from this point. This has not been a perfect system. We have been working with Mosaic. They've been wonderful partners to take feedback and adjust. We've been working with our principals. We have a group of principals providing feedback regularly. And we know some next steps that we're going to do to increase our monitoring and supports with school leaders and with principal supervisors. But I just wanted to share kind of how we embarked on this journey and where we're at and why this was an important piece of our change process. So I'll pass to Kristen, who's going to share a bit more around what this looks like in actual practice in terms of reports and things like that. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. I appreciate that. Just to come back to the key challenges this year that we were really trying to have a better understanding and get some clarity around for our principals, our principal supervisors, and as a central office that really sparked our current strategy and how we're partnering with Classroom Mosaic this year is that a couple of things. Our school improvement plans were diverse and often seen as a hoop. So we as many different schools and programs we had different school improvement plans. And so it was really hard to support any continuous improvement in a really significant way because of this. We also realized that our instructional walk data lived in Google Docs. And so any large scale data analysis, whether it was a building leader or at the central office, was really difficult to use to inform any continuous improvement. The other part is that we needed to really shift the district instructional focus from talking about, hey, the way we're going to move things forward is by having more intervention. We need to have more intervention. We're going to intervene our way out of the challenge we're in. And really, how do we shift the focus to improving access, engagement, and assessment in Tier 1 instruction? So Mike, will you go to the next slide? So a few things that we set up are some monthly and quarterly and annual monitoring routines. We set up a strong start to the school year. We call them their RISE walks. We also set up a real thorough structure around principal supervisor visits with specific protocols and those being captured. We also refined our instructional walk protocol, and we'll be sharing a little bit more about what that looks like in Classroom Mosaic. And then a really new piece is Central Office Instructional Leaders PLCs, where we're actually talking about, hey, what is happening at our schools? What are going to be the moves we need to do? How are we going to strategically support our principals with this work? So one of the things we wanted to share in Classroom Mosaic is what the school improvement plan looks like. So what we have is just we have some task monitoring so they can know where they are and getting things set up. But we also have places for having their mission and vision, their comprehensive needs assessment for equity, their tools, and they can refer to the district continuous improvement plan. Then you can see that each school then with these 4 goals that Christina talked about, attendance, literacy, mathematics, and 9th grade success, each school was able to select specific strategies in support of those. So we're going to delve into a little bit more about the monitoring routines. So this is really about how are we supporting schools with their school continuous improvement plan work in partnership with their instructional leadership teams. So one is, again, in Classroom Mosaic, each action item has a deliverable. So we're able to monitor that, and the building leader is able to monitor that with their principal supervisor. We have the RISE walks. I don't know if you caught our tagline, but we say together we rise. And so we started off with the RISE walks. And that's really focused on making sure that students are ready to learn. We have instructional clarity, that instruction is standards aligned, and we have equity accepted and expected in every classroom. So we're supporting all of our learners. I wanted to show a little bit about what this monitoring looks like. At a district level, we can see clearly what is happening for each of our schools. So you can see here a few of our schools, and then we can see as a district where we are around these. And each of these has a rubric assigned, to it. So we have from fully evident to not evident. It is a 4-point rubric. Again, we can look down, and the building leader can look and see for each grade level. So we can actually drill down and look by grade level around this data, which is really fantastic. And then you can see for instructional clarity, this is at the beginning of the year being really transparent about where we were. So we can see where those pieces are, what grade levels that is happening, and work with our building leaders around what professional learning that might look like during their staff meetings, early releases, one-on-one coaching, and or during PLCs. This is our instructional walk rubric. So the instructional walk is a little bit different than our RISE walks. Instructional walk is where our principals are each put into a PLC with 4 or 5 other principals that have similar demographics, similar kinds of content and things happening at their school, similar programs. And then they go with their principal supervisor and one person from the central office that really serves as a content expert in that space. And we go and observe classrooms. We're trying for 3 or 4 times a year. It's a little, a little challenging, but we have a goal. And these are around these same areas. You can see from RISE, you see the first one says students know and understand the learning target. That connects back to RISE with our instructional clarity. The task is grade level standards aligned. That connects back to the S in RISE. So this is really about not another walk, but how do we go deeper and really continue to hold high expectations and think about how we continue to move this forward with what's happening for our students. So how are we making this very student-centered and what's happening for student learning rather than just teacher-focused? Next one.
And what's just to quickly interject, what's really neat with PPS is that this language that was developed very uniquely for each grade level or each grade segment is actually captured within that walk. And so you don't have to like make something fit. It's really like they've adjusted the language to fit exactly that K-5 environment or language arts or math, which I know is appreciated by the observer. Sorry, keep going.
Thanks for pointing that out, Mike. Next slide. So one of the things you can see over Q2 is we can monitor how many instructional walks are happening. And so again, these instructional walks, we've done 315 over the last quarter. So that is pretty impressive. And you can see kind of the ebb and flow throughout the year is one of the pieces we can do. Next slide. We can also see what time, like what part of the class period we're seeing. Are we seeing mostly the beginning of class, the middle of class, the end of class? Because we know instruction has an ebb and flow to it. So we really want to think about what we're doing there. We also want to see how much time we're spending in classrooms and in spaces to think about those observations. The other pieces we can drill down again and see with our instructional walk data by grade level. We can also see by subject, and then we can see particularly for this quarter, how are we doing with the learning target being posted and the success criteria posted? And this directly responds back to the rubric. So I do want to say, while this looks really simple, it looks like, hey, are we just looking to see if it's posted? If you drill down into the instructional walk rubric, you would see that we're not just looking for it posted. We need to see that it's grade level standards aligned, that it aligns with the major work that students are engaged in during the task, and that it's aligned with the instructional materials. Then we can also see overall for each of these areas, and our instructional walk tool has 5. Our original iteration of this had many, many look fors. And what we heard from feedback from our principals over and over and over again is that it was too much. And we needed to get really focused and really clear. So it took us a lot of work, but we're down to 5 at this point, which is really nice. The other piece that's really great about this is we can drill down to the exact observation and the exact instructional walk. And within Classroom Mosaic, we're able to use photographs to capture evidence so we can really see this evidence of these things. So it's really nice with our principals to go out and drill down and look at, like, did this really look like this? What are we seeing? What should we be doing for the next professional learning? Do we need to dig more into high quality success criteria? Do we need to dig more into standards? One of the big learnings that our principals in central office had is we thought our teachers had a really strong foundational understanding in their grade level standards, and we learned that they did not. And so we had to kind of go back and think, okay, what does that mean we need to do to help them get up to speed while we're also focusing on our students understanding and having clarity about what's expected of them during class.
Hey, I wanted to go back. Can you speak to, just because I was a part of this process and I like really appreciated it as a principal last year, and you identified that maybe at the beginning there were like multiple look fors or too many. But I remember coming to the central office with a cohort of principals, and we had that question. It was like, what do we want to have every single learner in every single school learn? Like, what's the most important? And we can come up with like 100 different things. And we had Hattie to look at, and we had all these things. Could you speak to that process and how that intentionality played out in like actually creating this more simplified, focused look for form?
Yeah, Absolutely. So when Christine was presenting, there was a slide that showed our ideal student learning actions. And so what we did is we brought stakeholders, we brought principals, we did it with central office, we did it with teachers and our instructional coaches. And we said, looking at our instructional framework, what are the things that we want to know and have be true in 3 years for all of our students? So kind of back to this question when the person who was working with us said, hey, what do we know is happening in every single classroom? And the reality when we were asked that question is it wasn't. So what we did is through all of that feedback, consistently three common areas were showing up. One was learning. We wanted students to have the clarity in what they were learning. So learning targets and success criteria. We wanted them to be engaged in the rigorous work of grade level standards align and aligned task to that. And then we wanted students to be able to self-assess their learning and understand where they are and what they needed to do in order to grow. So when we did those things and we were reworking our instructional walk rubric, we looked back to those to make sure, then is our instructional walk, are we looking for evidence of these things? So you can see the first one is we came back to some work that we had done around what we call culture in the classroom, where we had really engaged our Black and Native families and community, because those are our two demographics that we are historically and persistently not serving in our district. And so we asked, like, what does this look like? What do you need? And one of the things is really that came back from that was fosters belonging, identity, and student agency. So that's where that look for came from. And then you can see in look for number 2, we have the learning targets and success criteria and students understanding why the learning matters. We actually ask students in our instructional walks, hey, what do you know about what you're supposed to be learning today? How do you know what those things are? And then you can see that we looked at the grade level standards aligned tasks, how much of the time are students engaged. So really thinking about that piece, and then the scaffolding to make learning all accessible for that. In just real clarity, as we start doing anything, there are parts that we are continually to refining. So in this journey, there are pieces that we're still working on, which is really working to integrate principals with their instructional leadership teams. This is a really important part of our shared leadership model in PPS, is doing some self-reflection with their school continuous improvement plan and thinking about their next steps. So we're in that process right now. We're working to continually align our instructional look-fors around that, because we realized that not everybody had the same understanding. So we're still doing coaching and learning during those instructional walks to make sure that we're all aligned around those high expectations for those.
I guess one thing is, have you found it helpful in kind of creating some guideposts in individual schools, creating school improvement plans, which has always been a thing, but you created a bank of strategies that kind of, I guess, created some coherence in what schools could choose. What did that do for central office, or what benefit did that have?
I,
Christina, do you want to answer and I can back up?
yeah, I can, maybe I'll start and then if you want to add. I think in an ideal state, that allowed us to really is like hone in on our supports. Like, what are we going to support with? What tools do we need to think about creating? I'm thinking of one tool that we created as a result of this was a instructional walk tool that had all of our scope and sequence in one spot. They could filter by grade level if they're a principal or a teacher. They could see their standard. They could see what it would map to in terms of the material, and then learning target success criteria suggestion. And so that's like that helped us align and rally around specific set of strategies that we wanted to focus in on. Again, I think that is ideal state. I think getting folks to change practice takes time, right? And so I think I'm in my head, I'm thinking of all the things that we need to do next to get to that ideal state. But I think like the vision set, we have some key things that we know are best practice that everyone needs to rally around within our strategies and actions. And then we need to get, in some cases, we need to get even more granular. I don't know if Kristen has anything else to
I
add.
mean, to add to that, what it helped is it helped us get clearer, right? Like by having clear strategies and actions, it really helped us narrow in where before we had as many different ideas you could think of. there were different kind of strategies and actions that were happening. So it helps us get clearer. We have a clearer picture of what's working, what's not working, where it's working, and we're able to highlight bright spots in ways, and we're also able to do strategic support. It's also helped us really turn some of those fingers back on us as a central office and think differently about our support and what that looks like. And are we adding to, or are we like adding to in a helpful way in alignment, or are we adding to in a way that is feeling like more and more and more? So those are the pieces that I think is a lot clearer, and it's helping our principals get much clearer on what are those high leverage things that they have. They and their instructional leadership teams have a lot of influence and impact to have things be different in their school. So I think that that's been really helpful.
Awesome. Hey, I really appreciate you all spending some time today taking us through what this looks like and where you are in your journey. I think it is just a beautiful picture of the work and the effort that it means to create cohesion, alignment, and Christina, like you said, it takes time, right? It really does take time to move practice. So thank you so much for being with us today.